Minister, I too want to stand in total solidarity with the peoples of Palestine and Gaza and to express a public condemnation of the ferocious and unwarranted massacre being perpetrated against those people by the Israeli state. And I echo the points made by Deputy McLaughlin. I think the world is looking on in horror, is shocked at the underrepresented voice of the Palestinian people, and in fact, when I would like to condemn in some senses the coverage in our own national broadcaster who has tried to portray this as a fight amongst equals or some sort of a civil war, when in fact it is a genocide, and it is in fact like the World Heavyweight Championship boxer taking on a newborn baby. That's the parallel of the forces at play here. We've had 1,500 attacks on Gaza in the last 10 days, 1,500 tonnes of explosives, and the majority of casualties being amongst civilians. But we have to step back from that. This isn't just a recent phenomenon, despite the recent escalation. The reality is that the Israeli offensive has been ongoing for some considerable time, with the detention of Palestinians at an unacceptable level and an intrusion in their daily lives. And we had the privilege a week or two ago of meeting in here a member of the Israeli Defence Forces, a member of Breaking the Silence, who saw from his own experiences inside the Israeli army about the propaganda that's taught to Israeli people about the role of the army, when he was quite clear, as indeed that exhibition was, that they are an army of occupation, that it's nothing to do with defence, it's an assault on people's living standards. So I want to know, why have we been so silent? I want an absolute condemnation from the Irish government of what's going on, a demand for the massacre to be ceased, for the bombardment to be ceased. I want a condemnation of Obama, Hollande and Cameron, who have stood shoulder to shoulder with the Israeli state. Small wonder when they pump in billions, a majority of which is given back to their own arms industry. And I want you to let us know what you're going to do about that and the illegal Israeli settlements on the ground in Gaza and Palestine.
Deputy Mick Wallace.
Minister, all the best in your new portfolio. No doubt we'll have plenty of battles in here. To date, more than 200 Palestinians have been killed, mostly civilians, women and children. In contrast, there's been one fatality on the Israeli side. I don't understand how the Irish government has stayed so silent. Over 300,000 Palestinians have been asked to move or to be displaced in preparation for an imminent attack. What's happening right now amounts to a massacre. It's not a war, and we should all be concerned. Israel claimed that it had the right to self-defence, but an occupying power does not have the right to self-defence. It has an obligation and a duty to protect the civilians under its occupation. Even if it fails to meet that duty, it must abide by humanitarian law, principles of distinction, proportionality and of necessity. It has not abided by any of these. What's happening in Gaza amounts to war crimes. It is a repeat of what happened already in 2008, 2009 and 2012. We will see this repeated again unless Israel is held to account under international humanitarian law and under international criminal law. We need responsible governments to introduce sanctions in order to work towards stopping these massacres and to address the root causes of these flare-ups, which is the structural violence of occupation, of apartheid and of settler colonialism. Hamas and other Palestinian leaders are very suspicious of Middle East envoy Tony Blair, acting as the link between Israel and Egypt. Blair is clearly a defender of Israel's interests, and in the interest of peace, the Irish government should advocate at European level for the removal of Blair, who should be tried for war crimes for his disgraceful involvement in the Iraq war. Last week, Netanyahu said, "No international pressure will prevent us from acting with all power," claiming to have recently had good conversations with leaders including Barack Obama and EU heads of government. Minister, are we also going to be complicit? Despite the fact that the United Nations top human rights official has called for an investigation into Israeli airstrikes in Gaza on the grounds that the targeting of Palestinian homes, resulting in a high death toll among civilians, particularly children, violates international law. Minister, is there any chance that our government would take a neutral position and highlight how disgraceful the Israeli behaviour is?
Minister, I too want to wish you well in your post, but I have to say your response has been wholly inadequate in the context of the crisis that's unfolding in Gaza. And the idea that the rockets which are being launched could somehow justify what you deem to be Israel's response is well short of the mark. I mean, let's be clear about this. What's been fired from Gaza is well off the mark. It's not hitting home. It's very low-key in terms of the firepower that's coming across from the other side. And the evidence of that is in the body count. Nothing on the Israeli side. A massive civilian loss on the side of the Palestinian people. And I think the point we're trying to make here today is that we're a neutral country inside the EU. A majority of the EU countries have bent the knee in slavish adherence to the United States and their colleagues in Israel for their own economic interests. We can be a beacon against that and be a voice of reasoned citizens across Europe to say that this should not continue. And I think we need to do a lot more. I echo the points about the Israeli ambassador, but I think we need to lead the way in terms of an economic embargo on the settlements and an undermining of all illegal Israeli activity which is behind a lot of the present conflict.
Thank you, Deputy Mick Wallace.
Minister, unfortunately the US and Egypt are happy to see Hamas take a beating. On Monday, John Kerry said the US was concerned about escalating tensions. On Tuesday he said, I cannot condemn strongly enough the actions of Hamas. Now, you were talking about both sides behaving themselves. If France invaded Liechtenstein, killed 200 of them, and there was one French person killed, would we be saying to the two countries, oh, come on now, lads, will you behave yourselves and make up? It's not what we'd be saying. We'd be throwing absolutely anything we could at France. It's outrageous what's going on. Everyone knows what Hamas's demands are not ridiculous. They're looking for the blockade to be ended. They're looking for the release of 50 prisoners that were released recently and re-arrested in exchange for an Israeli soldier. And they want the opening of the Rafah border crossing with Egypt. If the US continues to defend the indefensible, Israel is going to continue to behave abysmally. But there's no reason why the Irish government should behave abysmally. Let's call a spade, Minister. We need to be seen as a neutral country.
Thank you, Deputy.
And just call a spade a spade.
Minister has 2 minutes to conclude.
Thank you. I recognise Count Corley in response to Deputy.